I will resign as leader of the Labour Party. I have spoken to His Majesty the King this morning to inform him of my decision.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced his resignation on June 22nd, confirming that he will step down from office. On camera, the British Prime Minister delivered an emotional resignation speech outside 10 Downing Street, addressing the nation and his party.
The Labour Party to take us to begin the fight for work. But I know the question being asked now is not who was best placed to change the Labour Party to take us into power and to begin the fight for work and improving lives for millions of people.
It was less than 2 years ago Keir Starmer entered Downing Street. That summer's landslide election win now feels a long way off. And tonight, senior Labour sources have told ITV News they expect Keir Starmer to resign as Prime Minister.
The country that gave the world parliamentary democracy has had 6 Prime Ministers in 6 years, and the world is just lost a pillar of its stability. This is not a British story, this is a geopolitical story, and every nation is watching, from New Delhi to Brussels, from Riyadh to Washington, needs to understand what Britain's political unravelling actually means for the global order. Hi, this is Indradil and you are watching the Spotlight Beyond Profession, context over speed, credibility over virality, technology in service of truth. Let's lay out the facts because the facts alone are extraordinary. Since 2019, the United Kingdom, a permanent UN Security Council member, a G7 nation, a nuclear power, and America's most trusted defense partner, has cycled through 6 heads of government. Boris Johnson, dismantled by Partygate, a prime minister who locked down the nation and then partied inside Downing Street. Trust gone. Liz Truss, 44 days, the shortest tenure in British history. Her unfunded £45 billion tax cut budget collapsed the bond market. Mortgage rates nearly tripled overnight. The Bank of England deployed a £65 billion emergency intervention just to prevent pension fund collapse. A permanent member of the Security Council was bailed out by its own central bank in 49 hours. Rishi Sunak arrived as a steady hand, left as the architect of the most crushing Conservative electoral defeat in a century. 14 years of Tory rules ended in one night in July 2024. Keir Starmer, Labour's Great Reset, now barely 18 months in, resigned today, with over 80 of his own MPs calling on him to go and reform UK's Nigel Farage leading in national polls at 34% versus Labour's 22%. 6 years, 6 leaders, 0 full-term mandates. 0. Now here is where the global stakes become clear. First, Britain's soft power is in structural decline. Brand France's Global Soft Power Index ranked the UK 4th in 2026, but crucially, China overtook Britain for the first time in 2025. The British Council's own research confirmed it. The UK, alongside the US, Germany and France, is recording sharper than average declines in global perception. A decade ago, that was unthinkable. Second, Brexit severed Britain's trade arteries and hasn't healed. UK goods export by end of 2024 were still 20% below 2019 levels against the EU 27 average. Britain's export performance lagged by a staggering 17 percentage points. While the world traded its way out of the pandemic, Britain flatlined. Former UK Foreign Secretary David Miliband was blunt. Britain is now just one of the many middle powers, and its wealth, military assets, and reputation have all declined relative to others. Third, the populist fracture is now a geopolitical variable. Reform UK, Nigel Farage's insurgent movement won over 1,450 council seats in the 2026 local elections. It is no longer a protesting party. It is a governing in waiting force, with financial networks that stretch from crypto investors in Thailand to political relationships across the Trumpian transatlantic right. If Farage reaches Downing Street, and polls today cannot rule it out, Britain's relationship with NATO, with the EU reset, and with its Five Eyes partners enters uncharted territory.
Well, 10 years ago tomorrow, we had a referendum on leaving the European Union, and we voted to take back our independence. A word that will be familiar to all Indian viewers of this programme. And with independence comes the ability to make your own decisions. And despite almost the entirety of the political class and business community saying, please don't vote to leave, we did vote to leave. That was an earthquake in British politics. And 10 years on, neither of our traditional parties, Labour or Conservative, have either accepted the result or delivered the result. And so there is general fury that whatever we vote for, we get the same.
Fourth, and Britain's strategic commitments are being questioned precisely when the world needs them most. The UK's Chief of Defence Staff has warned the international order is undeniably becoming much more dangerous. Russia is an acute threat. China is increasingly assertive. Britain has AUKUS, Britain has Five Eyes, Britain has aircraft carriers in the Indo-Pacific. But all of that strategic architecture requires political continuity at the top. And that is exactly what Britain has failed to provide for 6 consecutive years. At the Spotlight Media and Technology, here is our geopolitical read, and we want to be direct. Britain's crisis is not a British problem. It is a systemic warning for liberal democracies everywhere. When the Truss mini-budget crashed the bond market in 49 hours, bond vigilance, not elected governments because of the effective rulers of British fiscal policy. Starmer himself reportedly warned that challenging his leadership would destabilize the financial markets. Think about that. A prime minister of the world's 6th largest economy governing in fear of bond traders. That is not sovereignty. That is the architecture of a constrained state. The rise of Reform UK carries another warning. Farage is not simply a domestic disruptor. He is a node in a global network of nationalist populism connected to the Trumpian right, to international capital, to geopolitical actors who benefit from Western fragmentation. Every time a mainstream government fails to deliver, that network grows stronger. And here is the deepest irony: Britain still has extraordinary geopolitical assets. A permanent UN Security Council seat, the world's 2nd largest financial center, world-class universities, intelligence services, and nuclear deterrent, AUKUS, G7, Commonwealth. These are not the assets of a declining power. These are the assets of a nation that has lost confidence in its own political class. And that loss of confidence is the single most expensive liability on Britain's balance sheet today. So what does a real course correction look like? Not from us, but from history and evidence. 1. Governance durability over political theatre. Britain needs constitutional reforms that protect institutional continuity, removing the structural ease with which internal party coups replace elected mandates. 2. A cross-party industrial doctrine. Green energy, advanced technology, life sciences, defense manufacturing, these cannot be reset with every change of government. Britain needs a 20-year economic architecture that outlives any single prime minister. 3. Reclaim the soft power dividend. Britain's universities, its BBC, its cultural institutions, its legal frameworks, these are instruments of genuine global influence. They need investment, not austerity. And 4. Anchor the transatlantic and Indo-Pacific strategies with domestic stability. Britain cannot be a credible AUKUS partner, a reliable NATO anchor, or a serious Indo-trade ally if its government changes faster than its diplomatic handshakes. Geopolitical credibility begins at home. Britain is not finished. But a nation that holds a permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council and cannot secure permanent occupancy of number 10 Downing Street has a credibility problem that no single election can solve alone. The question for the world is simple. Can Britain govern itself well enough to help govern the global order? That answer matters to every nation watching right now. At the Spotlight Beyond Profession, this is the analysis we exist to deliver. Subscribe and share this and tell us in the comments, do you think Britain can reclaim its geopolitical footing, or is this the managed decline of a once great power? Thank you very much for watching and signing it off.